Hi, and welcome to the Raw Heart and Soul podcast. Today I have with me Mike Fitch. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Tanya, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Really well. Thank you for asking.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, because this podcast is based around understanding people's soul purpose and what they do and how they came to find their soul purpose. Just tell my audience a little bit about yourself and what you do, because a lot of people know what I do as a personal trainer, as a coach, and will know of you through that, but not know who you are.
Yeah. So would you like me to focus more on career or just who I am in general?
I want you to tell me about who you are and who you were before you became, or before you evolved through animal flow.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll give you the short version of my life story up to this point.
30 seconds.
So yeah, exactly. The cliff notes to my life. I was born in Kentucky, so that's, if the listeners don't know much about the U.S. Kentucky is kind of Midwest South, considered in the United States, and it's a pretty rural state that has a lot of farms, horse farms, beautiful place to grow up. As a kid, I was really into skateboarding. I was really into music, so I was a musician, especially in the height of the grunge era. So I played in the high school grunge band and things like that.
When Seattle was evolving, like when stuff was
exactly. Yeah. So this would have been the time of Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden.
Mike, you don't look that old.
Oh, come on. I just turned 40.
Oh, wow. So you're still young.
Yeah. But so anyways, I had this very interesting life growing up, to where I was in those countercultures, or in those skateboarding culture, music culture, but at the same time I was really into fitness. So I was really into training, which usually doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with those other
with that
endeavors.
Grunge era. No, definitely not.
Yeah. So, but my father, both my parents, my mother was a dancer and dance teacher. My father was always into weight training. They even had a gym at one point, which I didn't even know about until 2 years ago, which I thought was very odd.
Yeah.
But it was a short endeavor on their part. But anyway, so that was something that I was able to connect with my father on, was training. We would work out together, and then that eventually got my skater punk kids into the gym as well. But having grown up in that kind of small town environment, my parents owned the grocery store in town. It was like literally a one stoplight town. Once I graduated high school, I moved to Los Angeles, and from there kind of cruised around the States for a while. I moved to Miami for a little bit, and then New York City. This is all at a very young age. Once I reached New York City, I decided I'd hired a personal trainer when I was living in Los Angeles, and I learned so much from him. He was so inspiring. I decided at that moment, and I was about to turn 19. I think I was still 18 at the time. I decided that I wanted to become a personal trainer. That's exactly what I wanted to do with my life. So I moved to New York. I think I obtained my first certification, which I believe was NSCA at the time. And I started working for a gym chain in New York City, which was great. It was incredible to be that young, to be living in the city, to have that much energy around me, to be really hustling at the time, because I would have to get up at 3:30 in the morning in order to catch the trains to get to my 5:15 a.m. floor shift.
Yeah, wow.
Before I had clients, and I was just kind of cutting my teeth and learning. So I felt really fortunate to have some really great mentors at the time, and just this drive, this passion to keep pushing forward and learning. And even the club that I was working for at the time had a really great education program. And so they start their trainers off with this desire to always continuously gather more information about the body. So then, fast forward, I moved to Miami, lived there for many years, continued to train there. And then right around the time that I turned 30, so 10 years ago, I started exploring some different movement disciplines. So I was, I'd already spent 11 years in the fitness industry, exploring kettlebell training, Olympic lifting,
Strength and
pre-post
conditioning.
rehabilitation, strength and conditioning.
Yep.
Yes, sports-specific training, the gamut that most trainers go through. And I was at a point where I was lifting a ton of weights, and I just felt like I was not honoring my system by only expressing one ability, which was strength. So I decided to put down the weights 100% and just started exploring movement discipline. So I got into gymnastics, parkour, breakdancing, hand balancing, dabbled in some circus arts. And I just realized, wow, there's so much here that I am benefiting from, that my clients could certainly benefit from, but they're most likely not going to go join an adult gymnastics class or go take a breakdancing class. So is there something that I can do, that I can create some sort of system that is built upon or inspired by, I should say, some of the things that I was experiencing, but works well with my knowledge of the human body and how it moves and acts? And that was really yeah, of course you can.
Because how much of the anatomy did you study? And where, as a personal trainer here in Australia, you get, and I used to teach this, but you get a very small portion of what I know and understand now to be anatomy, not just the physical, but the metaphysical as well. So where was that education? Because it seems like a really big leap, even though you've done the dancing and the breakdancing and the stuff in between that. But around that period, at 10 years ago, this kind of floor-based movement was starting to evolve. And I can say that because I've been in the industry for 15 years, and I know I was starting to do infant development probably around my 12 years ago mark through the Czech program. But then MoveNat came out. But where was your education in terms of anatomy? Because from my perspective, you understand that in depth with the movement that you produce and through Animal Flow.
So I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I always consider myself a bit of a geek when it comes to anatomy and the human body. And there was only so much that I felt that I was getting from all of these different certifications that I was pursuing, right? So it was textbook anatomy, you know, and this is the origin insertion, this is the nerve that innervates, this is the action. But again, that doesn't really translate to functional anatomy or movement anatomy, right? And how the body uses anatomy on a global and constant and various spectrum versus just isolation, right? So one of the people who was really influential to me at a very young age was Paul Chek. And at the time, you know, when I first started going through his curriculum, and I think I did every single correspondence course that they offered. And I had like stacks of VHS tapes.
Yeah, right.
I had all the binders and the stacks of VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And then, you know, through Czech, I was turned on to Yanda's work and, you know, looking at muscle testing and function. And then
Thomas
from
Myers
there, I was about to mention Thomas Myers was next, and Philip Beach and his work. And so it was so cool to have those different people that were so influential to me at the time, that were not considered like necessarily mainstream in the fitness industry. Like they were, you know, if you knew about them, then you knew about them.
And you studied and you loved them, but they were off the beaten track. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I remember taking Exercise Coach, do they still have Exercise Coach?
It's now called Integrated Movement Science Level 1, but yes, we do. Yeah. Modified a little bit since. Yeah.
Okay. So I remember taking Exercise Coach, and I believe I took Level 1 as well in a live course. But then, it was just, when you have that information and then you go into the gym with the other personal trainers, not that I'm knocking anyone else, but it was like, whoa, the difference was so apparent at the time of just like, you know, someone who's just counting reps versus someone who's actually learning how to coach someone to move their vessel more efficiently and effectively. So to go back to your question, it was, you know, I have to give huge props to all of those people that we just mentioned, who I think are absolute pioneers in the space. And it's been really cool to watch them continue to evolve. So anyways, so to build on that, whenever I was creating the Animal Flow program, every single movement in the program was based on that knowledge that I had about anatomy. So it wasn't that I would just pick a movement and go, oh, this looks cool. It was that I would pick a movement. Yeah, I would pick a movement and then go, okay, now how can I tweak this to get more out of it? How can I try to elicit more of a response from the front functional line or the anterior oblique sling? How can we show that this closed chain rotation of the glenohumeral joint will have this great effect throughout the rest of the kinetic chain? So it was taking that lens, taking those goggles, and looking at how I could use all this knowledge that I gained over a decade of application as a trainer, and use it in a way to create a system that anyone could come into and feel successful at right away. And maybe they wouldn't know all of that backstory. They wouldn't know all the why behind the movements, but they would know that it felt good in their body. And they would usually say, cool, I want to do that again.
Yeah. So explain exactly what animal flow is, again, elevator pitch, because there'll be people who listen to this who don't exactly know what it is. I know it and I love it, but I'm certified, so I understand it. But yeah, if someone, you go for me.
Yeah, cool. So I was just going to say there are a couple of different ways that I'll explain what animal flow is. But typically, if someone asks right away and they say, what is animal flow? I'll say, well, if you were to watch someone, I'll go with the visual first. So I'll say, if you were to watch someone performing animal flow, it would look like a combination of, let's say, yoga meets breakdancing meets either modern dance or gymnastics, maybe. And what it really is, and the way that I explain it further from there, is it is a ground-based movement system that's designed to improve all of your physical abilities. And then I'll go on to explain physical abilities, meaning like strength, power, speed, endurance, coordination, mobility, flexibility.
Abilities. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Biomotor ability. So if I think that they may understand what biomotor abilities
you bring that
are or mean, then I would bring that up. And then I'll go on to say, the name certainly is misleading. So when most people hear animal flow, they think, oh, this must be about acting like animals for an entire workout. And I say, we do use some animal locomotion and some animal-based positions, but really the intention of the program is to improve the function, communication, and connection of the human animal. So it's really about how we inhabit these incredible vessels that we're blessed with to be able to navigate our environment with. And we found that one of the best ways to bring people into their body to improve connection, communication, and function is by placing hands and feet in contact with the ground and moving around, figuring out these different movement puzzles that we call the animal flow movements.
Yeah, with the shapes within it. What do you say to someone who's interested in that? Or what was because this was really, like we talked about just before, those guys were out on a limb or outside the realm of what is normal fitness was. How did you bring that to being what is now really considered more mainstream? Because there are so many people doing animal flow. There are so many people doing gymnastics-based movement patterns in their training now. I see that now in our AFL football teams. That's starting to come through. Like people will say, oh, look, they were crawling, like they're doing your stuff kind of thing. How, in the very early days, did you present that? Or was it just something that evolved naturally when people started to see you doing the movement?
So the history is really quite interesting. So I started off where I was just integrating some of these concepts into my training training programs, or with my clients, I should say. So, I would have them do their normal workout, but then I would add in some of the, quote unquote, animal flow movements, just enough to kind of test the waters. Because I didn't want to immediately just go, all right, you've been doing this with me for 4 years. All of a sudden, we're now only doing this. Plus, I was testing out, how I wanted to coach the movements, how to use the language properly. So, but what I did notice right away is that response was overwhelmingly positive all the time, and people started requesting more and more of it. So at one point I decided, okay, well, let's do an entire class. Let's see how this works in the class format. So I just took the other clients in the gym that I was working at, this collective, this personal training collective, and I just started incorporating it, started offering classes where people could experience it in class format, and even seeing if that worked. And it did work, and it was cool because they all felt like they were part of something new, something different. It had this sense of really fun, a lot of fun and excitement to it. And there's almost like this immediate tribe component to it. So I thought, wow, this is great. There's something here. So
there's something powerful about this.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something that's it's resonating with people, and let's continue to explore this. So and at the time I had put out this this like website called Global Bodyweight Training, and that was more focused on calisthenics and creative bodyweight training approaches. And so it was almost like Animal Flow was the movement part of that kind of umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And so we already had a mailing list for Global Bodyweight Training, so we decided to film a DVD, an Animal Flow instructional DVD, and we put it in the newsletter that we were going to start selling this DVD. And at the time, as you mentioned, like it was not mainstream at the time, crawling patterns, flow stuff, getting on the ground for an entire training session, like that was just unheard of.
And it looks too hard.
Yeah, and it looked out of reach for a lot of people.
Correct. Yeah.
So we put out the information, we sent out the newsletter, and we had this crazy response back of people that wanted to pre-purchase the DVD before we even had finished filming it. And I think we had like 100 sales, which at the time for my business partner and I, we had never sold anything. And so we were just like, holy, like crap, what's going on? People actually want to learn how to do this thing.
Yeah.
So the DVD became pretty successful right off out of the gates. And then shortly after, I should say, we turned it into the approach or the methodology into a certification. And I think that was the best experience for me, taking the information and trying to teach it, because the target audience I can say at the time was personal trainers or other fitness coaches. So and that was always our business model in the beginning. It was to educate the people who educate people. So all of the workshops were other fitness professionals, and it was really, really interesting to see, especially some of the guys, also some of the women, but it's more typical with guys, where you have these really, really strong, really powerful, very muscular guys who are in these quadrupedal positions, and like the static beast.
Off the ground.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, and you try to get them to do the activations, and just lifting their hand from the floor is as if they're lifting 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
They're buckets, like there's a puddle of sweat underneath of them. And to go back to your original question, that's the buy-in. When someone asks you, well, what's it going to do for me? And you get the opportunity to say, let me show you. And then they get on the ground and they can immediately connect. Wow, this is a weak link in my training. I'm not strong here. And for some people, that's very scary. For some people, it's very inspiring.
Yeah. Could go both ways easily. How much of where did you learn about infant development, and how does that connect with Animal Flow? Because people know me for doing infant development, and I do both modalities, infant development and Animal Flow, and I combine lots of them within sessions with clients. But for me, Animal Flow tends to be the stage kind of between getting off the floor and ambulation.
Yeah. And I love that connection. And that was actually, whenever I was first working with Animal Flow and first starting to really try to educate myself on what the benefits were of quadrupedal movement and spending time on the floor, of course, my first point of focus was to look at neurodevelopmental stages, look at infant development, and figuring out, or at least again, expanding my knowledge on how important it is for us as bipedal upright human beings to go through these different phases. So whenever I was designing the curriculum for the level 1 workshop, it was really important to me to give enough information there to bridge that gap, I should say, between, okay, this was so important to our developmental stages. Then it's like we fast forward to where we're standing, walking around, and we rarely return to the environment that was so important to our development. And not only is it important to us as adults for our physical being, but it's also important to us as adults for our brain function and our cognition. So why are we not exploring this? Why are we not going back and really, really putting together that bridge again and crossing it many, many times?
Going backwards and forwards, because you don't burn that bridge once you go past it.
Absolutely. And you can't say that I got all the benefit from that, I'm not going to go back, right?
Bullshit.
That's totally ludicrous.
It's bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get back on the floor. Let's continue to move around. And I love, like, I love that you work in that space of going through developmental patterns and then kind of seeing that as this ramp up to animal flow, because we have some other instructors that do that as well. And I just think it's such a perfect marriage, because if you get someone into rolling patterns, if you get them really, really comfortable with how they are communicate and articulate with the floor, and then it's like a graduation of getting up to quadrupedal, and it's just like, cool, now that we're here and we have this awareness, we have this communication within our system, we have this proprioceptive enriched environment that we've been working in, let's just amp it up a little bit. And that's a perfect place for animal flow to live.
The thing I say to people, and I learnt this through, I don't know whether you know Kathy Dooley, she's part of the NKT community, neurokinetic therapy.
Mm-hmm.
She's a good friend of mine, but you've got to earn your right to fight with gravity. If you can't earn that right, then you should be on the floor. Like, you need to be on the floor earning that right. If you don't earn those curves, the cervical curve and the lumbar curve, like, you need to earn those before you can get up and stand. And if you've regressed to the point where you've compromised those positions in an upright bipedal position, then you're going to have to go back, and it's not going back, it's you're going to have to review what you learn on the floor, because your body has started to degress or to move away from what is instinctually natural in the motor neuron system and the muscular system. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's not your right to stand up and walk. You've got to earn that.
Yeah. And I love that. I think that's a really nice perspective. And, earning that right is returning to basics. But again, it's because that there's been a lifetime of experience in our, bipedal bodies that has, for most people, or not most people, but for a lot of people, has just gotten them further and further away from that learning experience that gave them the right to stand up in the first place. So I do like that idea of revisiting the floor, and now with a lifetime of experience in all of our tissues, in our nervous system, in our brain, and then figuring out how we can just kind of reset, like push the reset button, and learn how to then be able to navigate and negotiate with gravity in a totally different way.
Light up those pathways that are there that are just not being lit up at the moment.
Yeah. And the body, because the body is so lazy in certain ways, it strives to be efficient,
energy efficient.
And we've figured, it without us even having to think about it, it figures out ways to spend less energy to do the same task, and oftentimes it can be to our detriment. Totally. So going back and having that re-education, having that variability of load and forces, it just changes our experience 100%.
How does animal flow tap into the chakras? Do you know much about the chakra systems and the energy systems?
I don't.
Okay. We need to have a conversation off air, because it totally taps into certain chakras in certain movement patterns. And I use this because I'm a HLC level 3 with the Czech program. And I'm an IMS level 4, so quite high up. But I will use what I know from the Czech program and now we call them zone exercises, where we're trying to bring energy back into our chakra systems. I'll use the stuff that I know from the Czech program for that, but I use your stuff as well. So there are certain, so we probably should have that conversation off air, because if you want to, that's totally an element that you're tapping into, whether you know it or not.
Yeah, I would love to, 100%.
I'm going to ask you a question, and I know this from being an animal flow practitioner or instructor for the last couple of years. Why have you not pushed into the market for children? Because I see adults who are shit movers because of various different things, but one of the main things is being put in schools and sat down and not getting enough outside time and not getting enough time on the floor and in nature. Why has animal flow not focused on that area in children?
So the Animal Flow for Kids program was written 2 years ago. So from the beginning of Animal Flow, it was always the intention to have Animal Flow Kids. It's hand in hand. It's a no-brainer.
It is. Yeah.
So it's always been the intention. There's just been, throughout the timeline, there's always been something else that's kind of come up in priority. But Alicia Smith, our Australian master instructor, did a amazing job of putting together this program. And again, she wrote it 2 years ago. It's been kind of sitting on the back shelf while we had some other things, take priority. But we're now in the stages of her updating it just slightly so that it's, again, up to date. And then we will put it out for our instructors. And this is a program that it's for our instructors because it is, one, we want someone who's educated in animal flow and someone who's also qualified to work with kids. They can go through the system and then they can teach animal flow to kids. But then that's like the education part. And then we also have something called Animal Flow on Demand, and it's a subscription site where we have flows and classes and tutorials. We'll also have a segment for AF kids, and we'll have classes that are geared towards just kids, and then also classes that are kind of more like mommy and me classes, to where it's the kids and the adults practicing animal flow together and playing games together and experiencing movement in a really fun and exciting way. So it's not that we haven't been pushing forward in that direction. It's just that other things have come up, but this is our year. In addition to that, I will be teaching. So I just started teaching some live classes at a dance studio near here. And these are the first live classes that I've personally taught on a regular basis in 8 years, probably, because I've been only teaching workshops. So yeah. I can't tell you how incredible it has been for me to be able to teach anyone who walks in the door, and to be able to introduce this thing to people who want to learn more about it, who want to learn more about their own body. But the reason I brought that up is because we will also do some Animal Flow Kids classes that I'll be teaching live, so I can get an even better understanding of how the information is being absorbed and how I can apply these techniques with the younger kids. So I'm
you need to get your hands dirty again. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
How can, or have you seen animal flow be, I know I see it be effective and healing for people, general people. Have you seen any of the other sports take it up to improve their performance in their sports?
100%, yeah. And there are a couple of things there. One, the whole ideology behind animal flow is it can stand as a complete approach to movements, but it can also be taken apart and used as tools. So, you may see that, okay, great, that movement, I'm going to take that movement because that works really well for thoracic spine rotation and anterior hip opening. I'm going to take this movement because it works really well for spinal segmentation. So like whoever you are, you can look at these different tools and go, oh, I like that. So you can pick and choose, or you can put it all together and use it as a flow approach. There's just so many different ways to use it. But to go back to your question, what we've seen is over time, as we've gotten more and more feedback from different people of all different backgrounds, it is so many different things to different people. So for some people, it is their movement meditation. For other people, it's their way of expressing emotion, almost like dance. For other people, it is their intense HIIT training, if you will. For other people, it's more of a practice versus a workout. So you see it pop up in all of these different ways. But to go back to sports teams, we are seeing it more of that, like the a la carte menu, where we're seeing, for football players, they really like, the crab reach. For swimmers, they really like this. So we are seeing that it's being adopted by lots of different schools of modalities, or different modalities and movements. But that's one thing that I really quite enjoy about the program, is that it can be so many different things to so many different people. And they don't even have to say why. It's like, it's the same thing with our community, because we have such a strong community within Animal Flow. And it just means different things to different people. But the one thing that they all have in common is they can connect to other people through movement, no matter how it shows up in their practice. And that to me is just something so special. It's like, it's creating this global, worldwide community that's all based on expressing movement. And it just happens to be one style of movement.
Yeah. I recently started as a surf coach at our Australia's first ever proper wave park. It's called Urban Surf. And in the last couple of weeks, we pair up basically when we're teaching classes. So I'm teaching Learn to Surf classes and then beginner 1 and beginner 2. But I've noticed that some of the other coaches are starting to look to me now for the warm-up. They're like, oh, I really liked that warm-up that you did. I really enjoyed that. Can you do that with this class again? Like, they just put me straight into it. I'm not teaching, but I'm doing just basic animal flow warm-up. So it's interesting to hear it from their perspective, because surfing is really new to me, and swimming is really new to me. I learnt both of them so I could get this particular job as a surf coach at this particular park. But and I always wanted to bring both of my modalities, or bring my land-based coaching into that world, but they're not adapting, they're picking it up really quickly. And it's because it's how it makes them feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I want to mention, I was just looking at my phone because I wanted to get this right. There's a place in Florida called, their handle is Surf Dojo.
Yep.
But it's an animal flow instructor, and he uses animal flow with his young surfers. And he'll send me a video of them doing these drills and then applying it to surfing. And then, they'll do this maneuver in the water, and he'll go, oh, you see how that's a lateral ape with a scorpion sweep?
Yeah.
And he's using, the animal flow language. And it's so cool to see how they're integrating it. So I would love to follow up with you later and hear how it's working with the surfers as well.
Yeah, totally.
But, one thing I did want to mention to that is, when we, this is, of course, there's some humor that's leading this, but whenever people would ask, what's animal flow good for? We would always just say everything. And the reason that we would say that is because, going back to that original thing that I mentioned earlier about improving communication, connection, and function, is I'm a firm believer that however we go about doing that for someone, if we can improve the way that they are consciously connected to their body, the way in which their body is connected to itself and communicates on a higher level, and if we can improve the capacity or for a higher functional being, then I believe that whatever the endeavor is that they're pursuing, that they'll have a higher likelihood of being more effective at it. So to be better at it, and it doesn't matter what it is. So it's like, if we make someone in more control of their system, whatever they decide to do, they're going to be better at it, or have a higher potential to be better at it.
And they're going to be better humans. And that's what we really want. Like anywhere you come from in the fitness industry, anywhere, we just want better functioning, healthy humans.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, how important is tribe to you and community?
It's everything. It's everything. To me, it's everything. And I think that is the thing that I'm most proud of in animal flow. It is the community. It is the tribe. And, I saw that in those classes that I was teaching at that personal training studio, in the parking lot, I saw that there. And it was something that I had never really seen before in fitness. I came from tribe, so skateboarder tribe, music tribe. I grew up with that. I grew up with that sense of tribe. But to see it in fitness, it was different. I was like, wow, there's something here. And that's why it was so important to me in going forward with expressing and spreading the knowledge of animal flow, is that if you practice this thing, you are part of the tribe, you're part of the family. Mm-hmm. And it was really important to me that it was a welcoming tribe. There was no dogma. There was nothing that made it elite. It was just all are welcome. Come as you are. Mm-hmm. And once you're in it, you're brothers and sisters in this thing. And we saw it with our instructors right away, to where people would travel to another country and just get like in our Facebook group and say, hey, who's in Australia? Who's in Dubai? And then you'd have 4 people be like, hey, let's get together. Let's
go do a jam.
Yeah. And then they'd hang out and spend the weekend together. And to me, that's just like, that's winning. That's what life is about. It's about connecting with other humans, and with the pursuit being become better at being human. And that means so many different things, but it's the connections that we make, and knowing that it's in a positive and constructive way. And it's not just to hang out and go have a night out. It's let's express movement together. Let's better ourselves in a group dynamic. It's this individual practice in a group dynamic, which I think is so important and so unique.
Agree. I've not found any other fitness modality that is so inclusive.
Yeah.
So inclusive. I was going to ask you one more question around that. Do you think you have found your soul purpose?
That's a big question.
Big question. It'll be my last question
that you
for
almost forgot.
It's my last
Hold on,
question
there
for you,
was
Mike.
one more question
The most
here.
important one.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I can tell you, it's become abundantly clear to me, especially over the past, let's say 5 years, that I'm put here on this planet, I believe, to be of service. So I'm here to be a servant. And Animal Flow is an excellent vehicle that allows me to be of service to as many people as I possibly can. And hopefully that service leads to them enriching their life in some way. And again, allows them in some way, at least points them in a slightly better direction to be a better human, to be a better communicator, to be a better coach, to be a better father, mother, sister, brother, friend. So I realize without a doubt that that's my sole purpose here. Now, to go deeper into that question, or deeper into the answer, I should say, is Animal Flow the greatest expression of my sole purpose? I don't know yet. I don't think that it is. I like to think that I have more to give. I like to think that there will be other chapters of my life where I can be even of better service to humans or the planet. So yeah. I don't think that this is all I have to show for my life. I do believe that there will be multiple iterations of who I am and what I have to offer. So I think this is a good start. I think this is a pretty solid foundation.
I think this is a really good start, Mike, because I'm really excited to see where that evolves and see where that takes you and how you explore that, because you brought so much to so many people's lives already. So if you think this is not your end, it's really hard to know when the end is the end, isn't it? Like we don't have I haven't felt that yet. So I don't know what that would, I know that there's so much more to explore, but I really look forward to seeing where that takes you and how that evolves. That's very exciting.
As do I. I'm very excited as well. And, it always reminds me of that journey of self-mastery. You never actually reach it. It's the journey.
Yeah.
So they're never, I can't imagine I'll ever get to the point where I just go, yep, I'm done with my work here. Yeah.
I think the day that happens is actually the day that the soul leaves the earth. And that's when you evolve into something different. But that's another whole hour-long conversation, isn't it?
Hour, I think it's days. But days. Yeah, I agree with you. I think either that point is, yes, it's the transition, or it's the kind of like I'm done. Like I've stopped evolving. I've stopped learning. And you see that happen quite often, unfortunately, where especially in our field, especially in the fitness field, where you see people that are kind of like, it's my way and it's this way, and I'm no longer taking in new information. I'm no longer evolving. This is it. And it does become very dogmatic, and it does become not inclusive at all. And it's sad to see that.
It is sad.
One of my favorite things is people who are high profile, I could say, people who have large audiences. And I love when you see someone who goes, oh, I used to think this, now I think this. And that's okay. And it's not the end of the world that I've changed my view. And hopefully I have changed my view, because that means I'm continuing to progress.
Yeah, that's hard for a lot of people. Have you got anything else that you want to leave people with? Because that was my last question for you. Have you got what would you like people to take away from this podcast?
I think one of my very consistent messages that I always love to share with other people is, maybe not a message as much as encouragement. I really want to encourage people to try things that are completely outside of their comfort zone. And I know that can almost sound generic of get outside of your comfort zone. That's where the magic happens. But what I mean is, if you have the tendency to go to the thing that you are best at, you are strong at, which most people do, the thing that makes us feel successful, why not throw in something that's a total wild card that makes you feel very novice, very uncoordinated,
Very
very
beginner.
brand new, very beginner. And in doing so, you may find something that you may have never found before. And you realize that it resonates with you on a cellular level. It fulfills you, your heart, your soul, your brain, your body. And giving yourself the permission to just be bad at it. I just, that, especially in my world right now, that's such a huge thing, because I've gone back to exploring all of these different movement practices. So I'm going in and doing contemporary dance. I'm getting back into breakdancing. I'm getting into all these different styles of movement training again. And it's so fun to be the worst person in class. And
It is.
if you can allow your ego, if you can keep a child's mind, leave the ego behind, if you can just get past that and just allow yourself to laugh at yourself, to have fun, it's such an invigorating place to be. And there's just the benefits are just exponential. Not only may you find a new thing that you love and that fulfills you, but also it's just like, yeah, you're exposed, and that's okay.
And find joy. Thanks for being here with me, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was really good to talk to you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the invite.